Essential direct marketing insights for professional services in the age of AI. This is a podcast episode you don't want to miss with the unbelievable John Dwyer, JD from the Institute of Wow. He has incredible insights to give you, whether your business is a small business, medium business, or a large business. These are the tips and tricks you don't want to miss. They are going to get you real impact really quickly in many cases. We also talk about AI and the role it's playing and the incredible things JD is doing with AI at the moment. So sit back and enjoy this one with pen and paper in hand. The Institute of Wow, here we go. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Biz Bites. And my guest today is going to introduce himself, but all I can say is wow. So, John, over to you.
Oh, you started the whole show with a dad joke. That's terrible. You can't do that.
Come on, it can only go up then from there, isn't it?
Yeah, oh goodness me. Look, the reason that he has graciously said wow is because my business is called the Institute of Wow, and we're a marketing company, a direct response marketing company. And so we tend to sort of provide to businesses things that they'll get an instant result from. And we can't guarantee 100% that it's going to be a good result, but they'll get a result. Most of the time it is, but they'll get a result like within a day. And so direct response marketing is very different from brand marketing, where you might be sponsoring the Olympics or you might have your face on the side of a bus or the back of a taxi. Direct response marketing is all about putting on Facebook campaigns or Instagram campaigns today, or newspaper or brochure, whatever it might be, and knowing tomorrow if it's working for you.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because we've had these titles like social media, right? It's a really obvious title, but sometimes people just don't think about what it actually means. And direct response is exactly as you've just said, right? It's just to get a direct response. I find it interesting, though, social media, how many people in social media completely forget that the term social. That's the foundation of it in the first place. But talk to me about a direct marketing, because it's changed. I mean, you've been doing this for a while. So talk to me about changes for starters. What have you seen that's changed in over your time doing this?
Yeah, well, I've been doing this marketing stuff since 1842. So therefore, I remember my first form of transport was the horse and cart. Anyway, this is the silly dad jokes that my millennials. I've got 6 millennial children, and they bag out the baby boomers just like my baby boomer generation bags out the millennials, so they've heard it all. Look, there's been huge changes, of course, and the latest one, as you know, Anthony, is AI. We're getting robots now to basically answer the phone for our clients, and then also to schedule appointments and to do sales and all sorts of stuff. So therefore, when it's got to the stage where robots are playing a big role in direct response marketing, you just wonder, where else can it go? You think to yourself, it can't get much better. But I remember back in the day when fax machines came out, my father-in-law said to me at the time, this won't get any better than this. Fax machine. Yeah.
Joe, it makes us both feel old when you start talking about that, because I remember the fax machine. I think I've said before on the podcast, when my first paid job was at Channel 10, and we still had a typing pool at that stage. Wow. So, you give the scripts to the typing pool to type for the news in the evening. If there was, it was different.
And Anthony, I'm sure I speak for you and for a whole lot of other people that might be watching or listening to this, and that is that we scream if something takes 10 seconds to download now. Yes. But to answer your questions in terms of the changes, look, they've been massive. The mainstream media, as has been proven in the recent US elections, doesn't play the role that it used to for anyone, whether it be a politician or whether it be someone, selling goods or services. And I am not sure how the TV networks are going to stay alive, because, look at what happened with Trump. I mean, if he'd been on the Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show, then he would have had 4 million viewers. He went with Joe Rogan's podcast, had 54 million viewers. It's not even a close contest anymore. And so, it has changed in that respect. It's Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and TikTok and all those platforms, of course, deliver to you now like laser targeted audiences. In the day that you would spend money on radio or TV and newspaper, the wastage factor was massive, because if you were only after women who were, and you're selling a wrinkle cream for argument's sake, and you're after women who are the age of 45 upwards, and you had an expensive wrinkle cream, so therefore you wanted them to live in an upmarket suburb, then you can laser target that on social media, as you know, but you couldn't do that on newspaper or TV. There was massive wastage.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? That we've got more and more targeted. I think the interesting thing I've always found is that media has actually led the way in where we're going. I look back and say that in the old days where we had 3 television stations and that expanded, but eventually we got pay TV, and people started understanding, okay, you could choose a bit more specifically about your audience. Then it got more specific because those channels went from just, for example, a lifestyle channel to also having a cooking channel and a building channel, and etc. And it's got more and more specific. And podcasting is a great example of that, as you know, that it gets more and more specific all the time as well. There are podcasts out there that are just for very particular audiences that might be just skewed towards, females in their 20s, for example. Yep. And if that's the audience that you want, you can find that audience quite easily.
Look, I want to set up a network for ADHD people. I reckon I've got it. I've never been diagnosed, but I've got the attention span of a goldfish. And so I figured for people like me who cannot concentrate, if someone gave me a choice of doing a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle or 5 years in jail, I'd take the 5 years in jail.
We hope you're enjoying listening to the Biz Bites podcast. Have you ever thought about having your own podcast, one for your business, where your brilliance is exposed to the rest of the world? Well, come talk to us at Podcasts Done For You. That's what we're all about. We even offer a service where I'll anchor the program for you. So all you have to do is show up for a conversation. But don't worry about that. We will do everything to design a program that suits you, from the strategy right through to publishing and, of course, helping you share it. So come talk to us, podcastdoneforyou.com.au. Details in the show notes below. Now, back to Biz Bites.
Look, I want to set up a network for ADHD people. I reckon I've got it. I've never been diagnosed, but I've got the attention span of a goldfish. And so I figured for people like me who cannot concentrate, if someone gave me a choice of doing a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle or 5 years in jail, I'd take the 5 years in jail, because there's no way I'm going to put a jigsaw puzzle together. So I reckon if we set, and maybe you can go halves with me, Anthony, we'll set one up for people like me who've got a low attention span. You only have to make 1 or 2 shows, because they'll never watch the whole end of it anyway. So just loop the shows.
I'm with you there. It's like, when you think about it though, how many people sit there? I get frustrated when I watch my kids watching TV. If I've decided to put my phone down because I don't want work coming through anymore, and then all of a sudden, you're sitting there and going, are you actually watching this? Like, if I actually change the channel, would you even notice? Because they're on their phones and doing 600 other things. It's like, it's crazy.
It is, and we're having 6 millennials, and I know you've got 2 or 3, 2? Two, yeah. I mean, they're just not like us real humans, are they? I mean, they can multitask where they've got a laptop, a phone, and the TV in front of them. How do you do that?
I don't know. I really don't know. I'm like you. I get easily distracted on one thing to the next. It amazes me too that their ability to binge watch stuff at the same time. That's almost counterintuitive with the fact that they're doing 500 other things at the same time.
Yeah, no, you did right. The thing that I probably should have answered when you said, look, what do you see, in terms of changes with direct response, well, just marketing. When people ask me what direct response is, aside from saying what it is, what the name says, but the other thing is that most advertising agencies will tell you, get people to fall in love with your brand so that they will taste your product. And what we do is, if we flip that, we get them to taste your product so they'll fall in love with your brand. And I just think that's a very significant difference, because if the seafood shop has a host or hostess outside at lunchtime and dinner time handing out calamari samples, that's a very smart move, because they are getting people to taste test their product with calamari, and presumably it's nice, so therefore there's a percentage of those will come in and buy the barramundi, which is much more expensive. So we flip that model of getting people to fall in love with your brand so they'll taste your product to, get them to taste your product so they'll fall in love with your brand. I think that's the easiest way to explain it.
It's a great analogy, but I wonder how, you talked about AI. How is AI going to change that? Because, AI is almost in the way at times for that? Does it create more opportunities for those that are willing to go the traditional routes, or is it that you have to adapt?
Well, no, look, the example I just gave you was bricks and mortar, of course, being a seafood shop. But, if you've got an online business and, or an online component for your business, the wonderful thing with robots, and, we're down the path quite considerably with that, is that they can do the taste testing for you. So therefore, they can ring 1,000 people. And in America, robocalls are not able to be made unless it's to your database. And so you can't randomly make robocalls in America. That's what they call them, robocalls. But in Australia, it's still the Wild West. And so if you want the robot to ring 1,000 random people, you can still do that until someone comes in and decides that they put a government rule in place. But yeah, so we've got that happening whereby, we've got clients who could have only ever rung maybe, 20 or 30 people in an hour to now being able to ring 1,000 people in an hour. And that robot, who sounds like a human, so very few people would even detect that it's a robot, is actually asking questions and delivering taste testing of whatever that service or product is in that phone call. So talk about being able to expand your reach. And it's absolutely crazy. And if anyone's not using it at the moment, and there's plenty of people not, not you and I do because we're in the marketing advisory field, but for an everyday business owner who's not using it, either learn it yourself or get someone like you or me to teach you how to use it, because it is just the future. There's no question about that.
How do you think you kind of battle that difference between, particularly a lot of my audience are professional services based business, so they're providing some level of service.
Yeah.
And service by nature is generally done by human beings. And I think there's a lot of these services will still be, although assisted by AI perhaps in the background.
Yeah.
So how do you balance between where the AI should begin and end, particularly in that human facing, role? Like reaching out to people. Is there a benefit in still having the human facing, or it's just not economically viable to do it?
If you're in the service industry, they want to talk to you. There's no question about that. So therefore, if you've built up a reputation for yourself, Anthony, and you have, and so have I. Mine is bad, but yours is good. So that's good. Someone said to me the other day, we used cheeky as a child. I said, let's put it this way. I'd only have to walk out. I went to a Catholic de la Salle school, and the brothers were pretty strict, and we got the strap and all that stuff back in the day. I remember, like now, of course. Can you imagine anyone giving someone a leather strap these days? Not a chance.
Oh, no.
They were just going to. I cop that like every day, but I got to a stage where the teacher, the de la Salle brother, when I walked into the class, he'd just say, "Do I get out?" And I go, "Well, what do you mean? I haven't done anything." He said, "I know that you're going to do something, so just get out." I spend most of the time outside the classroom. So if you're doing stuff like you and I, where you're providing people with advice, there's no question, of course, that people want to talk to you, not a robot. However, what the robot can do, which is what we're doing at the moment, we've got great results from it, is that, and I'm sure you've heard the name, a guy called Frank Kern in America. Okay, so he's quite a well-known direct response marketer. And he has a phrase that he uses quite often, and that is, if you want to help people, then, just help them. In other words, if you want to demonstrate to people that you've got the answers to their problems, then just give them an example. Give them a sample like the calamari outside the fish shop. So what we've done is we've put together a model whereby instead of doing a gazillion dollars on Facebook and getting bad leads, what we do is that we actually choose the sort of business types that we know I can help in particular, because there's some that stand out. And what we do is that we actually invite them to come to a free 1 hour group session with me on Zoom. And so what happens then is that they actually get a call from the robot once we get their details, and they get text messages as well. But nonetheless, the robot rings them and explains to them, look, I'm Susie from the Institute of Wow. Just wanted to know if you'd like to have a free Zoom call, a brainstorm on Zoom with this guy who understands marketing. His name is JD, blah, 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 blah. And the hit rate that we're getting from that is surprisingly good. And we've only had, let's say, out of 500, every 500 calls, you only get about 5% of people who detect that it's a robot.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because I think in the phone call state, and it will change as people get more used to it, but we're so bombarded with call centers that call us, whether they're legit or scams. We all get a number of them every day.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
It's actually almost refreshing to get something then that sounds human,
Yeah.
and just gets to the point, and is clearly not clearly not a call center. I think
Well,
that's
yeah. Look, if we were flogging something, then I would be a little more hesitant. But we're not. We're giving something away for free. So the script goes something like, look, hi, it's Lisa here from the Institute of Wow. We're a direct response marketing company. We've noticed your business has ABC products or services, and you probably would love some of the direct response ideas that we have. And as it turns out, we have a free group Zoom session, which has no more than 10 participants. So we make sure they know it's not 1,000 people on board. And this guy who's worked with Jerry Seinfeld and looked after marketing for 7-Eleven and Westfield and Walt Disney and so forth, he's actually providing 60 minutes of his time for free, where you can ask any questions you like. Would you like a free ticket? And that's different from trying to flog something.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it is the key, isn't it? Because, so many of those things those people that call you, they feel like they're trying to give you something. They're not really, straight away they're onto it, and they just don't take you off the list either, which is absolutely frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we make sure that she hasn't got an Indian accent. Okay.
It's but on that though, when you say that there are 5% that might detect it, because you're getting the scripts afterwards and seeing the responses of what people are saying, and if people are asking that question, and if they do, are you have you got it trained to be upfront and say yes, it is an AI?
Oh yeah, no. If they ask, then it says yes. Okay, a little bit like when you were at a conference with me last week, you would have seen the sample, and if the person says, "Look, am I talking to a robot?" You can't tell a fib. No, the girl who's we've just named Lisa, but you can call her whoever you like, says, "Yes, I am. I'm an AI robot that's working on behalf of the company." So yeah. Yeah, so there's no, and look, in terms of knowing the statistics, because all the calls are recorded and transcribed if we wanted them to be, but they're recorded, then we can tell how many people are asking, are you a robot? And it's less than 5%. Now, whether some of the others detect that it's a robot and they just don't ask, but less than 5% of people ask, are you a robot?
Tell me, how much programming is there in terms of being able to adapt to the different questions that might get asked? Is it constantly evolving, and how much did you have to start with to train it?
Yeah, constantly evolving. But what we get the AI agent, robot, call them what you like, to do is to scour through the website, through Facebook pages, through anything we possibly can about the business. So that if it's answering a call, for example, let's just say we've got one at the moment on board, which is a trade business. It's an electrical services business with air conditioning and ceiling fans and putting power points in and so forth. It's a $5 million turnover business, and they've got 10 trucks on the road. And so therefore, when you ring that now, the robot will say to you, look, how can I help you? It's ABC Electrical Services. And you say, look, I'd like a quote on 3 ceiling fans and an air conditioner in my lounge room. It will have a conversation with you with regards to, okay, well, look, where do you live? And it'll make sure that it responds by repeating that address back to you. And then it will say, okay, when are you available? And if you don't say, a particular time, it'll say, well, how's Thursday at 10 o'clock sound? And then if the person says, oh, look, can I just ask a question? Although I'm asked after ceiling fans and an air conditioner, is there a chance that you might be able to put PowerPoints in for me? So it's a left field question from where the conversation started. The robot will then be able to answer that because it's already learned from the website and from the Facebook page all the facilities that business offers. It's just incredible. It's crazy.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I know following from that event we went to the other day, and I posted about this where I fed a whole lot of content from a number of my podcasts into the AI, and it produced a 3.5-minute audio review of the podcast itself and the value of the podcast. And it was a conversation between a male and a female talking about it, completely unscripted. It didn't take very long for this to be generated. I was completely blown away. And people who are listening in now, you check out my LinkedIn posts and you'll find it. But it's very, very interesting how that information can be taken and used. And does it sound like an AI? I think it still does, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there's always going to be a degree of an AI that's going to feel different to what the human experience is. And I think that's the difference. Like we've bumped around here, and I think we talked just before we started recording the podcast where I said, look, we're just going to see where this goes. And that's where, that's human nature, to be able to feed off stories, and we'll tell different stories or even different versions of stories depending on how people respond and the the time you've got and the feedback you've got. And AI can't really do that because it hasn't got that human nature to it, and I don't think it ever will have that ability to suck in all of your stories and then to utilize it in a conversation way. I certainly hope not.
But what we try to do, Anthony, to make it as real as possible, not that we are fibbing, we're not lying to anyone, it's just for them to determine if they think it's a human or robot or whether they even care. But when somebody asks a question, because there might be a half a second or 1 second lag for the robot to be able to find the information to answer that question, we have a noise effect of tapping a keyboard with a call center in the background. And that's one of the one of the options you can choose when you go down this path. And so therefore it does really infer that there's someone from a call center answering, because you can hear tap, 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 tap on the keyboard. So that really does disarm, if you like, a person thinking that it might be a robot, because sometimes it takes a second for it to answer.
So let's talk about a few other things, because the AI part, I mean, I think this is the important thing, just to finish on the AI thing, is that it is at this level now where you can experiment with it and do it, and you can turn to people like yourself who have got that set up to be able to offer it to people. But that's at a certain level of business, right? There are some of the smaller businesses may struggle to be able to do that, to afford someone else to come in, but it is the kind of thing where you can still play with it. But talk to me about some of the other options that you've got going on, because I know you've, and we won't dwell too much on it, but if for those that have not heard of JD, and we'll include all the links to all the stuff in there. Most famous, would I say most famous for bringing Seinfeld out? That's probably the big thing that everyone talks about.
No, I'm famous for a lot of stupid things. It was just that one I've milked the daylights out of.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? And I think those sorts of things are great things to really wow at a bigger scale on a bigger audience, but when you're talking about businesses that are, not quite at that level, what are the wow things that can be done to start making an impact in a direct response?
Yeah, no, good question, mate. Just so that at least the Seinfeld thing gets out of the way, because we've teased everyone by mentioning that name but didn't tell them what happened. I had a client some years ago called the Greater Building Society. It's now a bank, but it was a building society at the time. And I came up with an idea for them to take on the big banks by simply giving away an incentive. So we actually stopped the honeymoon rate, which every bank has, and we just gave that money to a travel company that was a wholesaler. And we came on TV and social media and we just said, look, get a home loan, get a free holiday. And the thing went nuts. They took an extra $15 billion worth of home loans in the first few years, and this idiot who you're talking to didn't do a door deal. I did a consultancy fee, right? What a moron. And so therefore, about 4 years into what was a 10-year promotion, people ask me, how long should you run a promotion? I say, McDonald's have been doing Happy Meal toys for 45 years. Yeah. Just rinse and repeat if it's successful. And that's what happened with this one. To get a home loan, get a free holiday, it just went nuts. We stole that much business from the Commonwealth Bank and Westpac and so forth. It just wasn't funny. And about 4 years in, I got Seinfeld to do their ads. And so that's where that all came from. And so for 3 years, I went backwards and forwards to New York, and we got Jerry Seinfeld to get on TV saying, get a home loan, get a free holiday. And of course, if it wasn't already successful, it just went through the stratosphere when you got someone like him involved. And as a result of being able to pull off, which, if I do say somewhat immodestly, it's, pretty big deal, then I've milked the crap out of it for the last 10 years.
And why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Look, with regards to other things, what we say to businesses, whether they're advisory or whether they're, bricks and mortar retailers, or whether they happen to be, doing an e-commerce business, if you're in a Me Too industry, and that means your solar panels look like the other guys, or your refrigerator looks like the other guys, or your lawn mowing service is pretty much the same as all your competitors, then you probably need the likes of what we preach, and that is wow factor marketing. You've got to come up with a wow factor that distinguishes you from your competitors, because if you don't, then the only marketing plan that you can have is to drop your prices. And if you drop your prices, the guy down the road can do the lawn mowing, cheaper than you in 5 minutes. So we say to small businesses, if you think you're going to win on price and you're a hardware store opposite Bunnings, then you need some serious psychotherapy, because you're not going to beat the 40-ton gorilla. But how you can beat the 40-ton gorilla, if that hardware store across the road from Bunnings says, look, for every $100 you buy from me, I'll give you a pitchfork, or I'll give you a leaf blower, or whatever the Happy Meal toy might be, Bunnings would have 6 months worth of committee meetings to try and work out how to combat that. You would just beat them hands down. So what we do for smaller businesses, because we realise that they're pretty good technicians, but they might not have skills in marketing, is that we provide them with exactly that. We provide them with concepts that will distinguish them from their competitors. So whether that's you can win $500,000 if you spend money with us, and that's an insured price promotion that they only pay a few $1,000s for, or whether it be fuel discounts, or whether it be free vacations. We give the opportunity for them to give away a free vacation, and we charge $50 for the vacation, but it's a 3 to 7 night vacation worth $1,000. We package all that stuff together for small businesses so that they can just plug and play. Because what I found coming from the corporate world of doing all this sort of stuff for bigger businesses like the Building Society, and I was the advertising guy at Woolworths and all of those sorts of things, they've got a marketing team that can make it happen. But if you're a small business, you're a good technician, but you just want the package. So what we do is that we just give them the package.
Which is amazing for people to be able to have that. And I think I think what's important is that businesses of any size, whether you are really small, or whether you're, in the category of the, I suppose any upwards of a couple of $1 million a year turnover and start getting bigger from there, then there are things that you can be doing to make you stand out and get an immediate response. And that's an important thing to be doing at any time of the year. I think there's a lot, people get sucked into, Black Friday is a good example. I often wonder why people get thrown into that basket with everybody else and doing exactly the wrong thing, is what you're saying, which is heavily discounting, which means that we all know there are certain places we just have to wait for those 1 or 2 times a year when the prices get completely slashed, that's when we buy. So all they're seeing is an artificial spike at a particular time of year where they've lowered their prices. And that to me doesn't seem like a logical way to go. There are these things where you can stand out, aren't they, on an ongoing basis and run it at your own pace.
Look, the reason I'm shuffling here is because I wanted to show you Exhibit A, and Exhibit A looks like this, okay? It's a holiday voucher, okay? It looks like that. And I know if you're listening, you're not seeing this, but it's an A4 voucher, which allows people to have 3 to 7 nights accommodation pretty much anywhere in Australia and around the world. Vegas, New York, Orlando, Grand Canyon, Bali, Fiji, Europe, all that. And what it is that when I did the campaign with Seinfeld, a travel company contacted me not long after, because it's pretty hard to keep it a secret when you've got Seinfeld doing your ads. And they said, look, we're a travel company. We get access to unsold hotel rooms at 4-star hotels around the world. We're not a marketing company, but we've seen what you do. You look like you've got half a clue. Do you want to join forces and offer this as a Happy Meal toy? My words, not theirs, but offer as a Happy Meal toy to businesses. And I said, absolutely. So what we've done is the last few years we've done that, whereby businesses can buy these vacation vouchers offers for less than $50, but they're worth up to $1,000. You try getting 3 or 4 nights at a hotel for less than $1,000, so that's why they're valued up to that. And they give it away as a Happy Meal toy. And I always say to businesses, let's just say you were selling something for $500. In the world of Groupon, where it's 50% off, do you think if you held a 10% sale, anyone would care? 10% off $500, who cares, But if for that same $50, which is 10%, you gave someone a $1,000 value holiday, shut the gate. So that's where, an incentive will always beat a price discount, as long as the incentive is a low cost to the business, but a high perceived value. And that's why McDonald's toys work, because that toy gets produced in China for 20 cents, but in Kmart, that's worth $4.50 or $5. So that's why the Happy Meal toy works. It's a low cost to McDonald's, but a high perceived value.
Does some of it have to be scarcity as well? Because, some of those toys that might be in a McDonald's thing, for example, you can only get in a McDonald's. Mm-hmm. And so it's depending on what it is that there is that, because I'm thinking about, particularly a couple of the supermarket chains that have done these little toys, and they try to create an element of scarcity with it, that they've got them there, but you can only get them here, and it's only for a limited time.
Absolutely. My mantra to any business is that, first of all, you got to have an offer. Okay, so if you're doing less than a couple of $1 million and you spend money on brand building, then I think you need some therapy, because Coca-Cola can do that, McDonald's can do that, Nike can do that, Kellogg's can do that because they're a big business. But if you're only doing less than $2 million, and many businesses are doing much less than that, in fact 96% of Australian businesses do less than $1 million turnover, then you shouldn't be in the brand building game. You want to build your brand, don't get me wrong, but you want to build it and sell stuff at the same time. And so therefore I always say to people is that when you are going to, be on Facebook or Instagram or wherever it might be, your message has to be an offer. Like I've got a client at the moment that just said to me, he gave me the copy yesterday for his Facebook campaign, and it was, we promise to try to beat, not to beat, but to try to beat any other quotation. I said to him, that's not, why don't you just give Mark Zuckerberg a check and say, don't even run the ad? Because that's not going to work. It's got to be an offer. And as you said, it needs to be an offer with either a time deadline or a quantity deadline. And so you're spot on. You can only get those McDonald's toys at McDonald's. You will never find them in Kmart.
Do you subscribe to the idea of the guarantees then? I've heard a lot, there's books and plenty of things being written about, you must provide some guarantee with your business. And usually it's something to try and make you stand out or what people want. I've heard it suggested to me as selling the podcast Done For You. You've got to guarantee that you'll have 10,000 downloads in 90 days and you'll double your amount of sales. And if anyone's listening and thinking, I welcome you, I want to talk to you about doing a podcast for you. But if you think that is going to happen, then none of that is real. Those kind of guarantees tend to, I don't understand that still works for people. They just seem so false.
Yeah, look, most of that is BS. And, the people who are in the information marketing game, which is the selling programs online of, how to be a better soccer player or, how to be a better builder or how to be a better computer scientist or whatever it might be, they do it because they know already there's skepticism. And so therefore they dilute that skepticism by giving a money back guarantee. And they know by statistics that there will only be ever 1 or 2 or 3 in 100 that will ask for their money back. And because it's a digital product, there's no cost involved anyway. So therefore if they sell 100 $3,000 products and they get 2 or 3 that come back again, they want a refund, well, so be it. But in the game that you and I are in, where we're offering advice, I could never, ever do it. And the reason I can't do it is because, I cannot guarantee that the client, the business owner, is going to implement what I tell them to do. It'd be like a doctor saying that, I'll guarantee that you'll get better if you stop smoking. And then he looks out the window and the guy that just visited him is lighting up a cigarette in the car park. So if there are ways that the business who, you give advice to, can get away with not following it, then you can't offer a guarantee. And I always say to people, I don't know whether you're wearing an ankle bracelet. So there's good reason why when you're offering advice, you can't give guarantees.
Yes, and look, as I said, it floors me that people still fall for that, and that there are still agencies out there pushing for that. I think it's really interesting to me. I mean, jokes aside, you've got an enormous amount of credibility for all of the things that you've done over a number of years, but it's getting harder and harder to stand out in a space that has so many scammers out there. There's just so many of them.
Yep. Oh, look, I have to say that one of my children went to the New York Film Academy. He's in his mid-20s, and they had to, at the end of the course, pitch a TV idea, a sitcom idea. And he pitched one that was like The Office, but because he's heard all my seminar stories, he called it The Seminar. And if there was a tagline, it would be BS on steroids, because I've stood in the green room behind some of the stages of these conferences and seminars, and the guy that was just out on stage before I go out would be telling you that he owned a castle and he had the Miss World wife, of course, and he had a Maserati and all this stuff that comes up on the screen. And when he comes off the stage and I'm having a drink with him behind the stage, I said, "Oh, wow, things seem to be going pretty well for you." He goes, "Oh, JD, that's showtime." I said, "What?" He said, "I'm really down to my last 20 grand. I went, "What?" What? So I've shared these stories around the dinner table over the years, and of course, this child of mine who's interested in video and filmography says, "Oh, Dad, I've got this fantastic sitcom idea." I said, "Don't you dare use any of the characters that I've described to you." Yeah, so the seminar game has certainly got some. It's got some baggage. There's no doubt about that, because the phrase, I believe, for the seminar game is get them high, make them buy.
Yeah, I can believe that. I can believe that. I wanted to ask you as well, because it kind of touches on some of the things that we've been talking about, is this whole concept of gamifying the things, because in a sense, what you're talking about with winning a holiday, and it's a game. How important is gamifying these days in incorporating that into business? Because it's a term I think we're hearing more and more all the time. Is that real? Is it really working? Is it something that's going to continue to work, or has it had its day already?
There's a yes and no to that. Look, you're talking to someone who's probably run more contests and sweepstakes than anyone, certainly in Australia, but maybe even globally. I've spoken at some places in America, and when I've told them that I did all the scratch bingo games for Murdoch's newspapers, and I've been involved in McDonald's and KFC and all the fast food chains doing scratch games and all sorts of promotions, they were blown away in America. So maybe I've done more contests than anyone. But if you said to me today, would you recommend that a business holds a contest whereby people have the chance to win versus something whereby if they purchase, they get a reward? Not might get, but they get a reward. I will always go for the latter, despite the fact that a large part of my career, some years back, we were doing at one stage, $14 million a year in the 90s, which is, for a small business, and we had, 20 employees at the time, but that was a reasonable sized business, and that income was all doing scratch bingos for newspapers and, scratch games to win $50,000 for Blockbuster Video and all that sort of thing. But if you said to me, would I recommend that? I'd say certainly in some instances, but in most cases, I would recommend to businesses to give away an incentive on purchase. So that means is that, if McDonald's said, look, buy a Happy Meal and 1 out of every 5 boxes will have a toy, I don't think they'd sell that many Happy Meals. And Kellogg's likewise, if they said buy cornflakes and 1 out of every 10 boxes will have a toy. So, they're woken up to the fact that you buy, you get will always beat you buy, you might win. But it leads me to this, is that if you don't have a Happy Meal toy that you can give away with every purchase of your service or your product, something that we've been experimenting with, and it's just like mind-boggling in terms of the response to it for small businesses, is what we call a Facebook contest formula. And so therefore we've developed a program that we sell to businesses, or they can swipe it and do it themselves. And, when I sort of describe it now, whoever wants to grab it, just go and do it yourself. But if you want it done properly, if you want it done professionally, then we have a package. And what it is that you give away your product or service as a prize on a Facebook contest. You will get a gazillion entries. Let's just say it's lawn mowing services for a month. Win my lawn mowing services for a month, and you give that away as a prize on Facebook. They click the ad to go through to your landing page, and on that landing page, which is the entry page, of course, they leave their details, and then you give one away, and you've got, let's say you've got 1,000 entries, you've got 999 people who have just put their hand up and glowed in the dark and said they need lawn mowing services. So you then ring them or text them or email them, however you want, and you say, listen, you didn't win the contest, but I've got some good news. I've got a special summer deal on at the moment whereby we can do this, that, and the other. And if you order by Friday, I'll give you a free holiday or whatever the bonus is. Shut the gate. It's all over because, I was talking yesterday to tutors. It was a webinar for tutors, maths tutors, English tutors, chemistry tutors online. And these are mainly women, and they're sitting at home behind their computer tutoring people. And I said to them, if you ran a contest where you gave away 10 maths tutoring lessons, I said math because it was American without the S, if you were to give 10 sessions away for math tutoring, who do you think would enter that contest on Facebook? And of course the answer is mum and dad who have slow learners, children at maths. I said, well, if you got 300 entries, you gave one prize, which was 10 sessions, do you think it'd be nice to have, 299 people you contact and say, look, you've got a child, obviously they're slow at maths, I can help you. It's just so easy. It's one of those things that's so obvious, but no one's ever used it before.
Isn't it obvious? And I think the challenge for some businesses is that lawns is an obvious one because you're not going to enter a competition to win a free lawn mowing for a month if you don't have a lawn. But one of the problems with it, with a number of businesses, of course, is that they might be a consulting type service and they offer a service, and it might be valid for a particular business, but and for many of those businesses, but ordinarily they couldn't afford to actually do it. So how much of a pre-qualifier do you need to put into that, or do you can't afford to do that? Because the old theory was just when you want people to get their details, ask for as little as possible, because the more you ask for, the less likely they are to complete the form.
Yeah, I don't go along with that, because the thing is that I don't want to talk to anyone who's broke, and that's not because I'm not a Christian. You know, I am, and I would like to help as many people as I can, but I've got to put food on the table as well. So, making sure you pre-qualify them like crazy on that landing page is so important. But we are so evil that when we're doing seminars, and since COVID, it's mainly webinars, but when we're doing seminars, we would ask for their turnover, and we still do that now with webinars. And so it will say 0 to 250, 250 to 500, 500 to a million, blah, blah, blah. And when they turned up to the seminar, we would colour lanyard them based on their turnover. And so therefore, if they were doing less than 250, they got a red lanyard, which meant stop to me, right? If they were doing over $1 million, they got a gold lanyard, which meant that I'd give up my firstborn to talk to them, right? So what would happen, because traditionally, and I told this last Thursday when you and I were at that function, there was a guy in the room who worked for Tony Robbins for 20 years. And he was at the function that you and I were at. And anyway, we got talking, and I told him about this technique that we used, where I could easily, when I stepped down off the stage, and of course, you know, you think you're Justin Bieber at these things because everyone comes up to talk to you, when in fact you want them to go down the back of the room to have smoke coming out of their credit card. And I couldn't work out who had money and who didn't, because at the end of the day, you give them free advice for 8 hours. You don't want to spend another hour just talking to people who have no way they're ever going to buy from you. So that's what we did. We color-coded them based on their turnover, and it made it so easy for me to work out who to talk to. And he was with Tony Robbins for 22 years, and his jaw dropped. He went, JD, that is insane. I said, yeah, it's pretty simple. It's as simple as the red and green lights in the car parks at Westfield. Why didn't that come in 20 years ago? It's only come in the last 5 years. But I said to him, does Tony Robbins not do it? He said, no, we don't know how wealthy they are. We've got no clue. I said, well, it's pretty simple. So, yeah, you want to pre-qualify them. You don't want to be talking to people who just are not in with, I mean, in the lawn mowing thing, of course, you know, you make sure that they own the house, they're not a renter, and you make sure they're not living in an apartment.
Yeah, absolutely, because it is an important thing, and as you know, particularly for all those people listening out there at the moment that are thinking, okay, well, how does this work for my business? But it can if you put a bit of pre-qualifying in there. And I think the message is that if the prize that they're going to get is worthwhile, then people will submit their information. If the prize is sort of ho hum, I don't really care, then feeling like they're putting their life away is an interesting one. And then I think the next part is which I think, because the laws in Australia are quite different to where they are almost in the rest of the world now regarding the collection of data and utilizing that. And most people just, I mean, I've seen it over the years. You go to a networking function, there's an exchange of business cards, and all of a sudden you're receiving 500 emails from that person. So in Australia, it's been the case that pretty much anyone can end up on a database. But if you're operating in a global sense, and I am, you are, those laws are quite different depending on where you are. So how important is it to then be, you know, asking them to tick a box as well that you can send them other stuff? Is that a necessity now?
Yeah, absolutely. Or not even necessarily tick a box, although that's an easy one. But at the top of the page, it says that should you fill in the form below, then you are giving consent for us to forward other details, you know, to you. But you know what? If you come across Mother Teresa style, whereby you are giving value in everything, then no one will complain. I mean, you know, when someone, that webinar that I held yesterday for tutors, okay, mainly in America, but they were in other countries as well. When a tutor was, and it came about because there was a lady in America who had me on a very similar thing to this, a podcast, and she coaches tutors. She used to be a tutor, but she's now, you know, moved on to be a coach of tutors. And she interviewed me, and when she was doing what you're doing now, Anthony, she was quite impressed. So she said, oh, what else can we do? And I said, oh, if you like, I'll teach tutors how to do that Facebook contest. because it's just so easy for them. It doesn't cost them to give away 5 or 10 sessions. And of course, they're going to attract people who need tutoring, or their children need tutoring. And so when we were talking yesterday about it on the webinar, they just said to me, well, how do we pre-qualify them? I said, well, it's pretty easy. I mean, you don't have to dig too deep. It would be, first of all, are you absolutely the parents of children? Okay. If it happened to be a math tutoring thing, how old are the kids? So you know exactly how old they are at school. Specifically, what are the symptoms that you see in terms of, I guess, lacking in math skills? And I don't know what they are, but a tutor I would tick A, B, C, D, whatever it might be. So you give them the options, and then just your contact details thereafter. That's all you need. And that means is that when you give the prize away, you're going to have a database from heaven. It's not a database. It's the world's most valuable database, because people who entered the contest for their child to, get tutoring for languages, they have a child that they know wants to learn languages. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's amazing how simple it is. I wanted to ask you a couple other questions before we have to wrap things up. We could speak for hours and hours on so many things here, but I'm intrigued. You thinking outside of the square is the big thing of what you do and trying to come up with these things. So firstly, let me ask you, what's wowed you in recent years?
Oh gosh, probably Elon Musk. I mean, over the years, when people ask me, do I read books? I said, no, I haven't got time to read books. If I did, I'd just go to the last chapter and find out what was happening. I just watched the movie. I watched the movie of the book because it's over and done with.
Just to get the AI to give you the summary, that's all you need.
Exactly, yeah. I remember before the HSC, the higher school certificate back in my day, back in the 1800s, we would I'd just buy the crib notes before, we went for the exam. And I'm exaggerating for the sake of humour, but yeah, I'll read autobiographies, no question about that. But yeah, just a fiction book, not a chance in the world. So the thing is that I used to, be, I guess, driven by the likes of anyone that was super creative. So that would be Walt Disney, and that would be Richard Branson, and it would be, Spielberg and people like that. And I'm sure anyone who's right-brained, and that's the creative side of your head, would be probably the same. You have to hold those people in high esteem. I've been to all the Disney parks 100 times, and my wife hates me, but I'll be measuring the bricks on Main Street to make sure they're the 3/4 size to enhance the fantasy feeling. And she's going, "Would you just get on the ride?" But these days, yeah, Elon Musk. I mean, when you look at who's at the moment probably the most innovative, creative being on the planet with a massively high IQ, Elon Musk, no question about that.
Yeah, isn't it amazing to watch? So, and I think the great thing is too that you can watch some of these people. You don't have to agree with everything that they do or say, but their ability to think outside of the square and to come up with something that really is next level. And so that's what I wanted to ask you about, is that how much of what you're doing these days is a balance between come here, we'll do it for you, versus inspiring people to be able to do it themselves? And how do you actually inspire people to think outside of the square if they're not in that part of their brain most of the time?
Great question. And probably 80-20, 80% packaged and 20%, advice. I can't say inspire because I'm not a consultant. All of my clients say that I'm an insultant, a marketing insultant.
I love that.
That's funny, because if you are either gifted or cursed with sarcasm, then what happens when you are holding an event or group webinars or Zoom calls and this, that and the other, you can't help yourself but be sarcastic, and I often cop it back. It's a contest. And in fact, I had one event on the Gold Coast about a year ago, and we had 60 or 70 clients in the room. And at the end of the 2-day conference, I said, "Was there anybody want to make comments?" And one guy put his hand up and said, "JD, I've been here for 2 days. Yeah, I want to make a comment." I said, "What is it?" He said, "Not once have you insulted me." I said, and he goes, "Well, I want to make a complaint. You've insulted everyone else." And I said, "Well, hang around for another 10 minutes, So it's all a joke, but we get on pretty well. It's the Aussie sense of humour, of course. I have to say that, probably 80-20. 80% businesses just want it done for them, and so we do. Like, for example, that Facebook contest form, you can run off and do that tomorrow yourself right now. But we had a client last week who just came on board, and he runs a landscaping business, and he gave away a $2,000 value landscape makeover, and he spent $290 over 3 days and got one entry. And when he rang me to say, JD, that didn't exactly work, I looked at his ad. It was just awful. And I explained to him that we had another company come on board about a week earlier who has medical equipment for older people. So they're walking frames. And we gave away a wheelie walker, which was worth $500, which is a walking frame for older people. And we put it on Facebook. And because of the, I guess just, the little tricks that we play, he got 822 leads in 1 week. And he spent not much more than what this guy spent. So therefore 822 leads versus one. I think it might be best if you've got a sore tooth to go to a dentist, And the inspiration thing, I have to say to you, is that because of my sarcasm, I don't know how inspirational I am, but with the advisory stuff, normally that's the business that has someone in their business that can execute. The advice is not much good. If I give it to the butcher and baker who's just there with his husband with her husband, or, it might be if it's a husband, he's there with his wife, they want it done for you. They haven't got time to be inspired.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And I think also hopefully the podcasts and other things are good ways of inspiring people to do those things. I wanted to ask you one final question on that subject before we have to wrap things up. But I get there and you've got someone who's got 822 leads. How does someone on that size cope with 822 leads? Because most people, that's kind of dream stuff that they're going, well, if we actually had 20 legitimate leads, so we could ring, 4 or 5 a day, we'd actually be quite happy with that. When you suddenly, get those kinds of numbers, how do you actually not do yourself a disservice and actually manage that? Do you need the AIs to actually be part of the package to be able to implement? What do you do?
Mate, the reason I'm smiling and giggling at this end, because I only just got off the phone with him before we got on to do this. And he said to me, JD, had you not implemented what we did a week ago, then he didn't know what he was going to do, because he said to me when this came in the first week, and he used a couple of colourful words to say, what the so-and-so am I going to do? And I said, well, because he's only got 5 people working for him, but he has a warehouse of all of this equipment, wheelchairs and scooters and walking frames and all that sort of stuff, then we just got the robot involved. So therefore the robot just rings all of the people to say, look, and most of these people are in their 70s and 80s, and the robot rings and says, look, you didn't win, but we've got this special deal for you. You obviously do have some sort of interest in this walker, but it's not just with the walker. We've got other things. They've got CPAP machines. They've got all sorts of things for older people. And what we're happy to do is that, we'll give you the equivalent, if you like, of second prize, and that is $100 voucher that you can put towards any of these other things. And the interesting thing is that the robot, because he had rung a few himself beforehand, by the way, and then he realised he'd never get through 800, the robot is beating his conversion rate. So I said to him, I said, mate, that shows you how bad you are as a salesperson. A robot.
Well, and it's the truth, isn't it? Because so many people get into business because they're good at what they do, or they're passionate about the product or service that they're selling, but they're not necessarily great at the sales process. And I'll be the first to put up my hand and say the selling part is not my forte.
Yeah.
And I know that the efficiency is one thing too, isn't it? Because the AI is going to be quite efficient in how it handles things and what it does. It's not going to get sidetracked. It's not going to turn what should be a 5-minute call into a 1-hour call, which can happen. I've had those. I remember walking, I think the classic was because my business name that most people will know is Com Together, and which is a great name. And it's linked back when I originally thought of the name. It had its roots immediately to the Beatles song, Come Together. And that often triggers people. And I had this conversation with someone and he said, oh, the Beatles Come Together. And he started singing to me and we just went off on this tangent. And after an hour, I'm just going, what the hell have this phone call been doing? Where did I go? It just went wrong. The robot would never have stood for that one.
Well, we've called our robots AI Genie. So we have a business called AIEngageGenie.com. And essentially, we tell everyone, aside from the wizardry of the technology, she doesn't get sick. She doesn't take days off. She doesn't have any relatives that pass away. And she doesn't get in any moods. I mean, imagine if you had an employee like that. Goodness me,
Yeah. It's a way to go.
Yeah.
So we got to wrap things up. So I'm going to do something. Look, I'm going to ask one question, then I'm going to ask you one other question. Normally, I just finish with this question, and the question is what's the aha moment that people have when they come to work with you that you wish they knew in advance they were going to have?
What's the aha moment? Is that what you said? Yeah.
Yes.
Mate, that's an easy one to answer. And, it's just how obvious this stuff should be to them, because really, whilst I thank you very much for your kind compliments, and we've only known each other for a short time, so it was lovely of you to say that. And I've got a reasonable track record. Not everything I touch turns to gold, but there's a reasonable track record there. The aha moment that they get is how simple the concept is. And, yes, is there some inherent DNA of creativity? Of course there is. But when I give the answer, and you were at the event last week, and I gave this very simple example, a little country town we lived in country New South Wales, in the Hunter Valley. It was just a little main street, and there was a hairdresser there that had been there forever. And my wife would go there to get her hair done, and the hairdresser's name was Kimberly. And she said to Gail, "Would John have any of that wow stuff? Because I'm in trouble." And my wife said to her, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I've been the only hairdresser in town for 1,000 years, and all of a sudden there's a lady that's opened across the road, directly across the road from me, and she's stolen all of the men." Because men don't care where they get their haircut, and she has $10 haircuts for men. And she said, "I charge $55 for a men's haircut. So either I've got to drop to $9 or I've got to do some heavy advertising on Facebook. But can John help me out? Is there any wow factor idea that he has? Because I've lost all the men. They just walk across the road for $10. They're going to get the haircut there." So Gal comes home, and of course this was a freebie. And I went, "Oh, thanks, Gal, another freebie," And but I knew Kimberly, so I thought I'd do it. And 2 days later, I came back to her and I said, "Look, here's the answer to it." And what we did is put a sandwich board outside her hairdressing shop, and the sandwich board said, "We fix $10 haircuts."
I love it.
Yeah, and I know I told the story at the event that you were at last week. Yeah. And so therefore Kimberly's aha moment was, "Oh my God, it was that simple." But of course it's not that simple for people who are not in the marketing or advertising or the ideas game. And so I always say, when you are a dentist and you go to university and you come out with a dentist certificate, did they ever teach you how to get clients? Answer is no. And it doesn't matter whether it's a builder or a doctor or a dentist or butcher or baker, they all go and get the certificates from, college or university, but no one ever teaches them how to get customers. And so therefore that's where we fill that gap. They are very, very good technicians. They're just not marketers.
I love it. Now, to wrap things up, two things. One is that you've got to show us the book. I know you've shown me the book. We've got to see the book now. Unfortunately, for people who are just listening in and missed this, and I encourage you to go back and watch the video on YouTube if you haven't. Take a look at this book. John, tell us about the book.
Yes, we are called the Institute of Wow, but because I do things like this gigantic tabloid-sized book, which is leather-bound with gold-tip edges and all sorts of things, most of my clients and most of my mates don't call it the Institute of Wow; they call it the Institute of Wank. So therefore, I'll take that as a compliment. This book, if you're not watching on video but you're listening, it's the size of the Sunday Telegraph newspaper, so it's the size of a tabloid newspaper, and it's called the Wow Manifesto. And I released this a few years back because I thought, okay, well, if we're going to write a book and everyone who, has some degree of knowledge is expected to write a book on whatever their knowledge is, in this, it's just case study after case study. So this is really a gigantic swipe file, of just direct response ideas that have worked. And everything from the puppy dog sale, through to how to win $1 million if you buy this product. And yeah, there's basically, look, if you do get this, and I'll show you how to get it in a moment, because that's our evil plan, of course, Anthony. But yeah, if you do get it, it'll be a swipe file from heaven. You'll be able to go through this book and just swipe ideas and use them for your business. And the reason I'm happy to do that is because, as you know, Anthony, I live to give.
Absolutely. And so, and we're going to include all the details on how to get in contact with JD and to be able to get a hold of the book as well.
Well, can I just say to you, Anthony, the way they can do this, and this is my evil plan, and this is absolutely wrapping up all the stuff that we've just discussed. Remember, I told you in the early part of the interview that I have this robot phoning the right people, not people, but the right people, and inviting them to have an hour Zoom webinar with me. I'm going to do that. And whoever has the Zoom webinar with me, you'll be on with half a dozen other business owners, so it's a group call. But whoever that has that with me gets the book, digital version of the book. Do you mind if I just give you the URL?
Absolutely.
Good. It's this sounds really corny. This is terrible. I can't believe I came up with this domain name, but anyway, getmorejd.com. Now, if that's not ridiculous, I don't know is. But anyway, my name is John Dwyer, but I get called JD. So getmorejd.com. If you go to that page, then you will be able to just simply register to have an hour with me the following week. So we don't mess around. Yeah, it'll be the following week, and it'll be you and half a dozen other business owners, and I will give you the book.
Fantastic. I love it. I love it. So the last thing that I've got to do is in the spirit of it, because you alluded to it before when you were at the conference and you did it last week so beautifully. I'm going to get you to wrap up what the podcast has been, what your experience has been on the podcast.
This is like Johnny Carson just telling a guest to wrap up the Tonight Show. That's unusual.
Absolutely. Why not?
Yeah, full marks to you. That's fantastic. You're rather thinking outside the square, and that's my sort of person. Okay, well, look, I'd like to say, Anthony, to wrap everything up, and you've run this webinar. You run this podcast now for how long, mate? Would this be 12 months you've been doing podcasts, or?
This podcast is now into its second year. Okay. After two years, we've done it.
Well, you know what? I have been a guest on podcasts to the tune of probably between 5 and 10 a week for the last 6 months. And so I've been a guest on a lot of podcasts, so I can compare you against, a lot of them. And some of them have claimed to be in the top 5 podcast audiences with Matchmaker FM and with Podmatch and all these things. But I've got to say to you, all the podcasters that I've been a guest of, I'd like to say this was the very best run podcast I have ever been on.
You'd like to say it.
I'd like to say that, but I can't. So your line then should have been, "Oh, thank you, JD." I go, no, don't thank me. I'd like to say it was the best, but I can't. It was pretty ordinary, to be honest with you.
I love it. I love it. But it reminds me, and I'm going to finish up with this. When I was at university, I went to university out at Bathurst at Charles Sturt University, and a couple of years before me had finished a very well known radio personality, Andrew Denton.
Yep.
And Andrew wasn't big on coming back. He made it big on Triple M in those days and everything. And somehow they got him to come back. And we got him on the local community station, said, "Would you record a promo for us?" And his promo was very simple. He said, "When I'm in Bathurst, I choose to listen to 2MCE. However, fortunately, I'm only in Bathurst once every 10 years." And it was very spontaneous and very well delivered. So I love a bit of sarcasm. So fantastic. JD, thank you so much for being an incredibly entertaining guest on the program. And I know that everyone's got so many things out of this, which I've loved as well. So thank you so much for being part of it.
My absolute pleasure. And all sarcasm aside, has been very enjoyable. You've been a great host. Thanks, mate.
Hey, thanks for listening to Biz Bites. We hope you enjoyed the program. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Biz Bites is proudly brought to you by Podcasts Done For You, the service where we will deliver a podcast for you and expose your brilliance to the world. Contact us today for more information. Details in the show notes. We look forward to your company next time on Biz Bites.